The email sat in my inbox for 3 days before I opened it. I knew who it was from. The subject line, "We need to talk about Al-Karim," made that clear. Staff Sergeant Michael Chen, my squad leader from Afghanistan, a man I hadn't spoken to in 7 years despite living in the same state. A man I'd actively avoided at veteran events, grocery stores, anywhere our paths might cross, because talking to Mike meant remembering, and remembering meant confronting what we'd all promised never to speak about. But the email wouldn't go away. Every time I opened my laptop, there it was, sitting at the top of my inbox like an accusation. So finally, on a Thursday night after 3 beers had dulled my resistance, I clicked it open. "Jackson, I know we agreed never to discuss this. I know we made a pact, but I can't carry it alone anymore. Rodriguez is dead. Suicide last month. That makes 3 of us gone. Only you and I are left who know what really happened in Al-Karim. We need to talk, please." Mine hands were shaking as I read it. Rodriguez was dead. Christ, that left just Mike and me from the original 5 who'd gone into that village in March 2013. Thompson had died from an IED 2 months after Al-Karim. Williams had overdosed in 2016. And now Rodriguez had eaten his gun, leaving Mike and me as the sole keepers of a secret that had apparently been killing us one by one. I closed my laptop and poured another beer, then another. But I couldn't stop thinking about Rodriguez. Couldn't stop wondering if the weight of what we'd witnessed had finally crushed him. Couldn't stop calculating how long it would be before that same weight crushed me. At midnight, I reopened my laptop and typed a response. "Tomorrow, tell me where." We met at a diner on the outskirts of town, the kind of place that's open 24 hours, and asks no questions about the haunted-looking men who occupy corner booths at odd hours. Mike was already there when I arrived, looking worse than I'd imagined. He'd always been lean and fit, the kind of leader who led PT sessions and maxed his physical fitness tests. Now he looked gaunt, almost skeletal, with dark circles under his eyes and a tremor in his hands as he lifted his coffee cup. "You look like hell," I said, sliding into the booth across from him. "So do you." He managed a weak smile. "I guess that's what 7 years of carrying this does to a person." The waitress came over and I ordered coffee I didn't want. When she left, Mike and I sat in silence for a moment, neither of us quite ready to begin the conversation we'd come to have. "Rodriguez left a note," Mike finally said. "His brother sent it to me. He didn't mention Al-Karim specifically, but he talked about demons he couldn't outrun, about things he'd seen that he couldn't unsee, about guilt that was eating him alive." He pulled out his phone and showed me a photo of handwritten text. I think he was talking about what we saw, what we did, what we agreed never to tell anyone. I didn't need to read the note. I lived with the same demons, saw the same things when I closed my eyes, felt the same guilt gnawing at my insides like a cancer. "Why now?" I asked. "Why break the pact after 7 years?" "Because we're dying, Jackson. All of us. Thompson, Williams, Rodriguez. They're dead. You and I are barely holding on. And I realize that what we agreed to, what we thought would protect us, is actually killing us. The silence is poison. So what do you want to do? Go public? Confess? That won't bring them back. Won't change what happened. No. But maybe telling someone, making sure the truth exists somewhere besides our nightmares, will help us survive long enough to figure out how to live with it." I wanted to argue, wanted to remind him of the pact we'd made, the oath we'd sworn, the promise that had seemed so important 7 years ago. But looking at Mike's hollow eyes and trembling hands, I realized he was right. The silence was killing us more surely than any enemy combatant ever could. "All right," I said. "Tell me what you remember. Let's see if our stories match." Mike took a deep breath, and I could see him gathering courage the way soldiers do before charging into enemy fire. March 2013, Helmand Province. Our platoon was conducting village stability operations, trying to win hearts and minds, build relationships with locals, standard counterinsurgency stuff. We'd been working with the village elders in Al-Karim for about 3 weeks. Medical care for the kids, repairs to the irrigation system, all the good things that were supposed to make them trust us. I remembered. Al-Karim had been one of the success stories we'd been told about. A village that was cooperating with coalition forces, providing intelligence on Taliban movements, allowing us to establish a presence without resistance. Then we got intelligence that there was a weapons cache hidden somewhere in the village. Our CO ordered us to find it, said the village elders had been playing us, pretending to cooperate while harboring insurgents. Mike's coffee cup rattled against the saucer as he set it down. He assigned our squad, you, me, Thompson, Williams, and Rodriguez, to search the southern part of the village while other squads covered the rest. "I remember the search," I said quietly. "House by house, looking for hidden rooms, underground bunkers, anything that might conceal weapons. We didn't find anything in the first dozen houses. The villagers were cooperative, let us search without resistance. No one seemed surprised or angry, just resigned, like they'd been through this before. And then we got to the compound on the southern edge of the village. But I could see in Mike's eyes that he was approaching the part neither of us wanted to remember. The part that had haunted us for 7 years. The family that lived there was nervous. The father kept trying to direct us away from a certain area of the compound. Said it was his wife's space, that it would dishonor her if strange men searched her private quarters. Thompson thought he was stalling, hiding something. Started getting aggressive, pushing past the father, heading toward the restricted area. And we followed, I added. All of us. We thought we'd finally found the weapons cache. Mike nodded, his face going pale. We forced our way into a back room. The father was begging us not to enter, getting physically between us and the door. Thompson shoved him aside, kicked open the door, and we went in with weapons raised, ready for hostiles. The memory was vivid now, unavoidable. I could see it as clearly as if it were happening in front of me. But there were no weapons, Mike continued, his voice dropping to a whisper. There were children, 7 children, ranging from maybe 6 years old to early teens. All girls, chained to the walls. The diner suddenly felt too hot, too bright, too loud. I wanted to leave, to run, to escape the memory that Mike was dragging back into the light. But I stayed. Because Rodriguez was dead, and Mike was right. The silence was killing us. They were covered in bruises, malnourished. Some showed signs of sexual abuse, and they were terrified of us. Cowering against the walls, covering their faces, making sounds I've never heard from human beings before or since. Mike's hands were shaking so badly now he had to clasp them together on the table. The father wasn't protecting weapons. He was protecting his secret, his private prison where he kept kidnapped girls. I felt bile rising in my throat. Even after 7 years, even after thousands of hours trying to process what we'd seen, the horror of that moment hadn't diminished. We called it in immediately, I said, my voice rough. Got the CO on the radio, told him what we'd found, said we needed medical support, interpreters, someone from the provincial government. This wasn't our area, this was a criminal matter for local authorities. And the CO told us to stand by, said he needed to consult with higher command about how to handle it. Mike laughed bitterly. Like there was any question about how to handle it. We'd found imprisoned, abused children. The answer was obvious. Free them, arrest the father, get them medical care and protection. But that's not what happened, I said. No, that's not what happened. Mike looked at me with eyes full of anguish. An hour later, the CO and a lieutenant from battalion showed up. They went into the room, saw the girls, spoke with the father through an interpreter. Then they came out and gave us our orders. This was the moment, the decision that had haunted all 5 of us for 7 years, the choice that had seemed impossible then and remained impossible now. They told us to leave, Mike said, to pack up our gear, exit the compound, and continue our search elsewhere. Said the situation with the children was a local cultural matter that we weren't authorized to interfere with. Said getting involved would jeopardize our relationship with the village elders and compromise our mission. Thompson argued. I remembered. Said those girls were being tortured, that we had a moral obligation to help them. The CO said our obligation was to follow orders and complete our mission, not to impose American values on Afghan culture. American values, Mike spat, as if opposing child abuse and imprisonment was specifically American, as if basic human decency was a cultural imposition. Williams pointed out that the father was violating Afghan law too, that kidnapping and child abuse were crimes under Afghan legal code, not cultural practices. The lieutenant said that was for Afghan authorities to deal with, not American soldiers. Said our involvement would be seen as overreach, would turn the village against us. Mike was crying now, tears running down his face as he relived the moment we'd both tried so hard to forget. And then the CO made it clear this wasn't a discussion. He said we had 2 choices, follow orders and leave the compound, or refuse orders and face court-martial. He said if we interfered with local matters beyond our mission parameters, we'd be charged with insubordination and dereliction of duty. So we left, I said, my voice hollow. We walked out of that compound, left those girls chained to walls, and continued our patrol like nothing had happened. The shame of it was crushing. Even now, 7 years later, I could barely breathe under the weight of what we'd done, or rather, what we'd failed to do. Rodriguez threw up, Mike remembered. As soon as we were out of sight of the compound, he stopped and threw up in the street. Thompson was crying. Williams was so angry he was shaking. And you and I, we just kept walking, kept moving, because stopping meant confronting what we'd just done. What we'd just allowed, I corrected. We saw children being tortured, and we walked away because we were ordered to. When we got back to base, the CO called us into his office, all 5 of us, and he made us take an oath. Mike's voice was flat now, emotionless, as if he'd retreated somewhere deep inside himself. He said what we'd seen was classified, that discussing it with anyone, other soldiers, family members, therapists, anyone, would be a violation of operational security and subject to prosecution. He said the situation was being handled through appropriate channels, that local authorities had been notified, that intervention was forthcoming. But we all knew that was bullshit, I said. We knew nothing was being done, that those girls were still there, still chained, still being abused, and we were ordered to stay silent about it. Mike nodded. He made each of us verbally agree to the terms, made us understand that speaking about what we'd seen would destroy our careers, potentially result in criminal charges, and accomplish nothing because no one would believe us over official military reports that said no such incident occurred. And we agreed. All 5 of us. We took the oath. We promised to never speak about Al-Karim. We sat in silence for several minutes, the weight of our shared confession settling between us like a physical presence. Other diners came and went. The waitress refilled our coffee. Life continued around us, ordinary and normal, while we drowned in the memory of an extraordinary betrayal. What happened to the girls? I finally asked, though I wasn't sure I wanted to know. I don't know. I've tried to find out over the years, searched news reports, contacted people who worked with Afghan NGOs, even hired a private investigator, but I found nothing. No reports of children being freed from that compound. No arrests. No investigations. It's like that day never happened. Mike wiped his face with a napkin. Which means either the girls are still there, or they're dead, or they were moved somewhere else where they're still being abused. Every scenario is a nightmare. Have you tried contacting the military? Filing a report now, years later? With what evidence? I have no photos. We were ordered not to document what we saw. No official reports. Those were either never filed or were classified at levels I can't access. No witnesses willing to corroborate. Thompson's dead. Williams is dead. Rodriguez is dead, and you and I both agreed to stay silent. It would be my word against official records that say nothing happened in Al-Karim on March 15, 2013. What about the other soldiers who were there? The CO, the lieutenant, the interpreter. The CO retired 2 years ago, lives in Florida now, probably enjoying his pension while 7 girls rot somewhere in Afghanistan. The lieutenant was killed in a training accident in 2015. I looked him up, thought about confronting him, but he died before I got the chance. And I never knew the interpreter's name. He was contracted through a third party, probably went back to whatever life he had before that day. I felt a surge of anger, hot and acidic. So everyone gets away with it. The father continues abusing those girls. The officers who ordered us to stand down face no consequences, and the 5 of us who witnessed it are destroyed by the memory while the perpetrators go free. That's about the size of it, yeah. Mike's voice was bitter. Welcome to the moral complexity of modern warfare, where following orders means abandoning your humanity, and refusing orders means destroying your life. Thompson, Williams, and Rodriguez couldn't live with it. They're gone. Which means you and I are the only ones left carrying this. That's why I contacted you. Because I can't carry it alone anymore. Because I wake up every night seeing those girls' faces, hearing the sounds they made, knowing I walked away and left them there. Because I'm drowning in guilt and shame and the knowledge that I'm a coward who valued his career over children's lives. I wanted to argue with him, to say he wasn't a coward, that we'd been in an impossible situation. But the truth was, I felt exactly the same way. Coward, collaborator, someone who'd chosen self-preservation over moral action. What do you want to do? I asked. Why did you really ask me here? Mike pulled out a folder from the bag beside him. Inside were maps, dates, photographs of the village taken from public satellite imagery, names of the officers involved, everything he'd been able to piece together about that day. I want to tell someone who can't be intimidated or silenced, a journalist maybe, or a human rights organization, someone who'll investigate, who'll try to find out what happened to those girls, who'll make sure this story doesn't die with us. The military will come after us. They'll deny everything, discredit us, possibly prosecute us for violating classification agreements. I know, but I don't care anymore. Rodriguez is dead. Thompson and Williams are dead. I'm barely alive. And those girls, if they're still alive, are still suffering. Someone needs to speak up, and we're the only ones left who can. I looked at the folder, at 7 years of Mike's obsessive documentation, at the evidence of a crime that officially never happened. And I thought about Rodriguez's suicide note, about Thompson and Williams dying young, about the 3 survivors who'd all been destroyed in different ways by the burden of silence. If we do this, if we go public, our lives are over. Military prosecution, public scrutiny, possibly civil liability. Everything we've built since getting out will be destroyed. What have we built, Jackson? Really? Mike looked around the diner, at the empty tables and the bored waitress and the neon sign flickering outside. I work a dead-end security job and drink myself to sleep every night. You avoid veterans because you can't stand to be reminded of your service. We're not living, we're existing. We've been dead since the day we walked out of that compound. At least if we tell the truth, our deaths might mean something. He wasn't wrong. Since leaving the military, I drifted through jobs and relationships, never committing to anything, never letting anyone get close enough to ask about Afghanistan. I lived in a studio apartment with minimal furniture and no personal touches. I had no friends, no hobbies, no interest beyond getting through each day without thinking too much about the past. What if telling the truth doesn't help? What if no one cares, no one investigates, and nothing changes except that you and I are destroyed for breaking silence? Then at least we tried. At least we stopped being complicit. At least those girls, wherever they are, will know that someone saw them, someone remembered them, someone finally spoke up, even if it was too late to save them. Mike pushed the folder toward me. I can't do this alone. I need you to back me up, to confirm the story, to be willing to face whatever consequences come from telling the truth. I stared at the folder for a long time. Inside it was evidence of my own moral failure, documentation of the day I chose career over conscience. Opening it, endorsing Mike's plan, would mean confronting that failure publicly, facing judgment not just from the military but from everyone who learned what I'd done, what I'd failed to do. But Rodriguez was dead, Thompson and Williams were dead. And Mike was right, we were dying too, just more slowly, poisoned by silence and complicity. All right, I said finally. I'll back you up. Whatever happens, whatever the cost, I'll tell the truth about Al-Karim. Mike exhaled, relief flooding his face. Thank you. I wasn't sure He couldn't finish, emotion overwhelming him. We should have done this 7 years ago. Should have refused the CO's order to stay silent. Should have gone to the media immediately. Consequences be damned. I pulled the folder toward me and opened it. But we didn't. We took the easy path, the safe path, and 3 of our brothers are dead because of it. We can't change the past, can't bring them back. But maybe we can honor their memory by finally doing what we should have done in the first place. Over the next hour, Mike walked me through everything he'd assembled. Dates, times, locations, names. He'd tracked down the compound using satellite imagery, had identified the village elders, had found reports of other children going missing in the region around the same time. He'd built a circumstantial case that something terrible had happened in Al-Karim, even if official records denied it. There's one more thing, Mike said as we prepared to leave. I found someone who might be able to corroborate parts of our story. An Afghan interpreter who worked with coalition forces in Helmand province during that period. He's living in the US now, was granted asylum. I reached out to him, and he's willing to talk to journalists about the general practice of coalition forces ignoring local human rights abuses to maintain relationships with village elders. That's not the same as confirming our specific story, no, but it establishes a pattern, shows that what we witnessed wasn't an isolated incident, but part of a broader policy of looking the other way when American values conflicted with mission objectives. We exchanged contact information and agreed to meet again in a few days to finalize our plan. As we stood to leave, Mike grabbed my arm. Jackson, I need to know something. Do you blame me for ordering you guys to leave that compound? For not refusing the CO's order myself? I thought about that. Did I blame him? He'd been our squad leader, the senior NCO, the one who could have refused orders and forced the issue. But he'd also been a sergeant facing down a captain and a lieutenant, threatened with court-martial and the destruction of his career. I blame the system, I said finally. I blame the officers who prioritized mission over morality. I blame the policy that treated child abuse as a cultural matter rather than a crime. I blame myself for not refusing orders. But you? You were in an impossible situation, same as the rest of us. We all made the wrong choice, but the real villains are the ones who put us in a position where that choice had to be made. Mike nodded, but I could see he didn't quite believe me. Didn't quite forgive himself. Maybe he never would. Maybe none of us could, no matter how many speeches we gave about impossible situations and systemic failures. I drove home through the early morning darkness, the folder Mike had given me sitting on my passenger seat like a bomb waiting to detonate. Inside it was everything we needed to destroy our lives and possibly, finally, do the right thing. My phone rang just as I was pulling into my apartment complex. Mike's number. What's wrong? I answered, sudden fear gripping me. Nothing. I needed to tell you something. In case we don't get a chance later. In case things go bad once we start talking to journalists. He paused. Thank you for being willing to do this. For not letting Rodriguez's death be meaningless. For helping me believe that maybe speaking up can matter even if it's 7 years too late. We're going to face hell for this. You know that, right? The military will destroy us. The media might not even believe us. And even if they do, it might not help those girls. I know. But at least we'll have told the truth. At least we'll have stopped being part of the cover-up. At least we'll have honored the memory of 3 brothers who couldn't survive the weight of silence. Mike's voice was steady now, resolved. Maybe that's all we can do. Bear witness. Tell the truth. Face the consequences. And hope that somewhere, somehow, it matters. After we hung up, I sat in my car for a long time, looking up at my dark apartment window, thinking about the choice I'd just made. Tomorrow or the next day or next week, Mike and I would contact journalists. We'd tell our story. We'd provide documentation. And then everything would change. The military would deny our claims. would probably charge us with violating classification agreements, possibly with more serious offenses. Our names would be dragged through the media. Experts would debate whether we were heroes for speaking up or traitors for breaking silence. Our lives as we knew them would end. But 7 girls, if they were still alive, might finally have someone advocating for them. The story of what happened in Al-Karim might finally be told, and 3 dead men who'd been crushed by the weight of silence might finally be honored by the breaking of it. I carried Mike's folder upstairs and set it on my kitchen table. Then I opened my laptop and started typing. If I was going to confess to what I'd witnessed, what I'd failed to do, I wanted my own words documented. Wanted to make sure that even if journalists didn't believe us, even if the military successfully covered everything up again, there would be a record, a testimony, a witness to the witnessing. I wrote through the night and into the morning, every detail I could remember about March 15, 2013. The heat of that day, the smell of the compound, the sound of those girls cowering against the walls, the look on the father's face when we discovered his secret, the orders we received to leave, the oath we were forced to take, the 7 years of silence that followed. And I wrote about Thompson, Williams, and Rodriguez, 3 men who'd carried unbearable weight until it crushed them. 3 brothers who deserved to be remembered not as casualties of combat, but as casualties of moral injury, destroyed by the impossible choice between duty and conscience. The sun was rising when I finally finished. I saved the document, backed it up in 3 places, and emailed a copy to Mike with the subject line, "My testimony, for whatever it's worth." Then I made coffee and sat at my kitchen table, looking at the folder of evidence, at my written confession, at the choice that now lay before me. Speak up and face destruction, or stay silent and remain complicit. Rodriguez had chosen a third option, escape through death. So had Thompson and Williams in their own ways. But Mike and I, we were still here, still alive, still capable of choosing truth over comfort, consequence over complicity. My phone buzzed with a text from Mike. "Got your email. Reading it now. This is good. This is right. Whatever happens next, we face it together." I texted back. "Whatever happens, together." And for the first time in 7 years, since the day we walked out of that compound in Al-Karim, I felt something other than crushing guilt and shame. It wasn't redemption. That was probably impossible for what we'd done. It wasn't even hope exactly. But it was something. A small crack in the wall of silence. A beginning of bearing witness. A choice, however late, to stop being complicit and start being truthful. The girls we'd failed to save 7 years ago deserved at least that much. And so did the 3 brothers who hadn't survived the weight of silence.